Charlene Barshevsky is making U.S. trade policy for the world. I ain't gonna let Barshevsky turn me around. 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 I ain't gonna let Barshevsky turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking. Keep on walking. Marching up the freedom land.
My brothers and sisters, we're gathered here today because we are in pain. Yeah. Pain produces anger. And those that feel it are the ones that know it. Bob Marley said that. We're here today because millions of lives depend on us. Yeah. And that's the truth.
That's right.
Africa right now, Africans are facing extinction. That's as close as I can put it.
No.
And it's a slow, painful extinction. And what really pains me is that the world is unmoved. AIDS is actually wiping up large populations of people. And the rate is so alarming. And then the only thing that's stopping us getting help is profits. Disgusting.
There's a standard for intellectual property that the U.S. has set forth. That's a standard that has to do with protecting people against things like piracy of CDs, or of records, or of computer equipment. Charlene Barshevsky, the woman in that office, likes to come down real hard on countries where they try to make copies of things like CDs and other electronics. But Charlene Barshevsky seems to think a life-saving medicine and a CD is the same thing. And what we know is that doing trade in medicines means doing trade in an essential product, okay? Medicines are different. Charlene Barshevsky needs to own up to that. And what we know is that when developing nations try to take strides to make products protected by intellectual property more accessible through legal means, like compulsory licensing and like parallel importing, they're doing what's in the letter of the law, and they need to be allowed to move forward with those public health plans. Charlene Barshevsky needs to encourage countries to do that. Because saving lives, well, because lives are a human right. And access to essential drugs, that's a human right too.
The good news is that this contemptible trade policy is generating a wide ocean of opposition, united in opposition to the unconscionable trade policies emanating from this building.
This lack of insensitivity and compassion to fellow human beings is being demonstrated by the continuing making of trade policies which are oppressive and inhumane. Trade policies driven by greed and they kill. Trade policies that do not respect human rights and human life. Access to health care is a human right, and policies in which much of the human population has to wait decades to get access to life-saving drugs is a violation of these rights. AIDS is about people, it's about humanity, and we're all people. That's right. We come in different shapes, sizes, and shades. But that doesn't make our lives less valuable.
And what is that U.S. trade policy? It's a policy of punishment for poor nations that are struggling to get access to life-saving essential medications for its sick and dying people, for its hundreds of millions of people with AIDS, with malaria, with multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. And what do they get from Charlene Barshevsky? Worse than than nothing. Worse than nothing, they get bullied. They get threatened. They get backed into a corner by our ambassador. They get backed into a corner by someone who's paid with taxpayer dollars to represent the U.S. government. She backs nations like Thailand into a corner when they try to make generic versions of DDI, an AIDS drug, for its 1 million people with AIDS who can't afford access to treatment. And what happened to them when they gave signs of trying to do compulsory licensing for the drug DDI? What do you think happened?
We stopped nothing!
Charlene Barshevsky did worse than nothing. She came knocking on the door and said, Thailand, if you do this, well, the U.S. won't take your exports anymore. We'll just collapse your economy. We'll collapse your economy by refusing to take your exports instead of you being allowed to save your citizens with AIDS. What do you think about that? Does it make you mad?
The implication of all this breaks my heart. It speaks of a climate where there's no value to lives. If our deaths can serve a buck or two, then that's okay with them. It speaks of a climate of overt international institutionalized racism and structural violence.
That's right.
We want international policies, particularly trade policies, to reflect immediate and urgent crisis. Right now, that's the AIDS pandemic.
The fact of the matter is, Charlene Barshevsky is the multinational, multi-billion-dollar drug industry's hired gun. They have a direct line to Charlene Barshevsky, who says to her, Charlene Barshevsky, what Thailand, what Brazil, what South Africa we're trying to do, well, that's legal. But we think it makes business bad for us. And when Charlene Barshevsky heard that from the drug industry, well, she decided that the whims of the multi-billion-dollar drug industry were more important than global health, than human lives, than people getting access to the drugs that they need to stay healthy, to stay alive, and to care for their families. That's outrageous! Shame on Charlene Barshevsky! Shame! To make. And when the drug industry says efforts like Thailand's to do compulsory licensing of a life-extending AIDS drug would cut into their profits, well, the dirty secret is that's a lie. That's a lie. Because the fact is that most of these drugs, they cost pennies to make. Most of these drugs were heavily funded with taxpayer dollars. And the dirty secret is, if countries like Thailand and Brazil and Zimbabwe and Zambia start making their own versions cheaply of patented therapies, then that will undercut drug companies' ability to rip off consumers in first world countries like the United States.
International policies that are profit-geared are evil and genocidal. And these international trade policies are the ones that have created such unimaginable poverty in Africa. Such poverty that when AIDS came to Africa, people had no means of defending themselves. AIDS found a home in Africa. Poverty created by the national and international policies, both by government and lending bodies, have continued to give AIDS a hand. Yes, there's a welcome debt relief initiative going on. But if you tell me that I'm gonna, you don't have to pay me, the $10 you lend me because you're sick and you're dying, but wash my laundry for a week, that doesn't make any sense. The trade policies That's what they talk about. They must reflect, an action of compassion. And AIDS must be the #1 issue right now. Okay? We need, the poor nations of the world to have effective and constructive solutions to their problems, solutions which will impact everybody, the poor masses.
This body is called the Office of the United States Trade Representative. But you and I know it has been functioning for many years as the Office of the U.S. Drug Industry Trade Representative. That, sadly, is the agenda they plan to carry to Seattle. Their plan is to push for changes to the existing rules on intellectual property rights, rules they helped create, so that the drug companies can go further to maintain their murderous pricing monopoly, regardless of the consequences for patients across the world.
Patients, not profit.
Their plan is to fight the efforts of third world nations who want to expand opportunities for governments to get life-saving medicines to the people who need them. But grassroots organizations from around the United States and around the world will be keeping Ms. Barshevsky and her colleagues company in Seattle this November.
We want action, and we need immediate and unconditional assistance to save our lives. We want access to treatment drugs that will enable us to raise our children, and we want to preserve our cultures. We were too sick and tired of burying and mourning our dead. Our morgues are filled, our cemeteries are filled, our families are broken, our communities are broken. We have no more tears to cry. Our voices are hoarse. We can no longer scream at the pain. It's just too much.
We will be there to communicate a simple message: no more. No more trade agreements designed to benefit corporations at the expense of ordinary people.
No more!
No more sanctions to punish countries whose only crime is caring more about healing the sick than filling the coffers of Bristol-Myers Squibb and Glaxo Wellcome. No more legislation like the so-called African Growth and Opportunity Act, a bill that is being sold by this administration, by this U.S. Trade Representative, as a helping hand for Africa, but is in fact a powerful new tool to allow drug companies, is this working better? To allow drug companies and other corporations to get what they want from African governments at the expense of the African people.
That ain't right.
Our message in Seattle will be the same message we've brought here today to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. No more. No more.
Not only are we surrounded by the physical death, but we're also surrounded by social death, moral death, and spiritual death. And this is the death that will really end this world. We are sick and dying of the trade policies that do not save our cultures, our communities, and ending this millennium with such shocking humanity tragedy is really a reflection of how we lived it. We lost a sense of the value of life. Maybe to deal with, maybe we may be able to deal with the physical death in the next millennium, but I can assure you we'll never be able to recuperate from the moral death, the social death that this tragedy may leave behind.
We wanted to take our hands off every developing nation using its legal ability to increase access to essential medications. So that means an end to every attempt to levy trade sanctions, to kind of bullying measure or tactic against any poor country trying to save the lives of its citizens. We want to call a stop to it today.
Some years ago, here in the United States, life-saving medications were deliberately withheld from Americans with a debilitating illness. Many of these people died and did infirmities. quite naturally, the people didn't receive the medicine, and they were poor and black people. After the victims of the United States government had died or lived most of their lives in pain and were now elderly, President Clinton apologized for the Tuskegee experiment. Now, at the opening of a new millennium, the United States government is withholding medicine from sick and poor people again. I'm talking about President Clinton's cabinet-level officials. This is the person who represents the policy of the United States to the whole world. Charlene Barshevsky is the United States Trade Representative for Clinton and Gore administration, and she is deliberately withholding medicines from sick and dying people. This is her.
They may not have the pull of profit that the drug industry has, but that doesn't matter. Because if we can't make Charlene Barshevsky see the light, we sure as hell can make Charlene Barshevsky feel the heat. Am I right?
We are here to shine the light of public scrutiny on this topic consults only with corporate interest. We are here to demand essential medications for every nation. I am a person with AIDS. I am alive today because of life-saving medications. The pharmaceutical industry is the most profitable business in the world. Drug company interests are represented in Congress by pharma, one of the largest lobbying organizations. Many people with HIV are many people, that is, who live in whiter, wealthier nations of the world. However, the lethal team of Barshevsky and pharma collaborate extensively to ensure that 90% of the people with HIV in the world are left for dead. At the time it takes me to deliver this speech, 22 people in poor countries who are denied access to medicine will have died from AIDS.
Medication for every nation! Medication for every nation! Medication for every nation! Medication for every nation!
Charlene Barshevsky, at pharma's request, instigates dozens of actions against poor countries attempting to save the lives of its citizens through legal and